95% get the first money from Norway.
The idea of Norway controlling the world might evoke its historical Viking reach of modern economic power.
And then they raised 10-15 million kroners.
Norway gonna be a new Singapore or Switzerland or Dubai.
In September last year, $650 million.
Welcome, Trond. Nice to meet you here again. After 4 years almost, we've been filming interview in your office, and now you're here in our podcast room.
Thank you very much for the invitation. I've been looking forward to this.
Can you introduce and tell about yourself? Because I think, but everyone, if they're looking, they already know who you are. You are the investor number one, I would say, here in Norway.
Well, my background is that for 25 years, I was a partner with McKinsey & Company. So my role was to try to help the Nordic companies expand globally. And I found that to be fascinating. I really liked that. But like 10 years ago, I saw that more of the real innovation, more of the entrepreneurship, more of the use of new technology happened in the entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem with the founders. And these founders sometimes came from McKinsey, sometimes from some of my clients. And they wanted help. And I found that I could be more helpful on my own, with my own company, supporting them, than in my previous role in McKinsey. So I then left McKinsey, started my own company, and wanted to help two types of founders. One group are the people who want to build something successful out of Norway. And that's been my primary focus, to help them scale companies out of Norway. And the second pillar is East Africa. I'm born in Addis Ababa, always done a lot of work in Africa, and I want to help with the job creation and innovation and entrepreneurship also in East Africa. So these are my two pillars, and that's how I spend my time. And since starting my company, we have invested in 120 companies, so we have a pretty interesting portfolio.
You told globally, so that's why we also talk about the global things. And our topic of today's video is going to be Norway's control the world. Maybe it's a bit loud, but anyway, Norway's sovereign wealth fund, valued at over 1.7 trillion, owns stakes in thousands of global companies. As an investor in disruptive tech startups, how do you see Norway leveraging its financial might to shape global industries, particularly in sustainability and technology? Could this economic cloud be seen as a form of control over global markets?
Currently, the reality is that there is zero link, there's no link. So the way Norway has operated its oil fund is totally arm's length to all industrial policy, an arm's length to any type of link back to any activity in Norway. So it's currently, as you know, managed in such a way that all activity is outside of Norway. All the mandates to investors, to funds, are given to non-Norwegian companies. And the goal of the oil fund is not to be visible. So they have a small share of pretty much every company. So they're not trying to shape, they're not really trying to influence. It's changed a little bit with the mandate for renewable infrastructure, for example. But that's the reality. I think actually, so because of that, I think it's a bit far-fetched to believe that Norway is controlling the world. I think some of us have argued that we would benefit, both Norway would benefit and the world would benefit, if there were a little bit more of a link between our financial fortune and what we're trying to do as a nation. And one of the things that I've been basically suggesting also to the owners of the oil fund, to the Ministry of Finance, is that we probably should engage internationally, not in Norway, but internationally, in the kind of pre-IPO market by investing in leading venture capital firms internationally and potentially also private equity. I think that would be interesting from a diversification point of view, but not the least from getting networks and capability, because we would then actually get access to the very best venture capital firms in the world. you could see that they perhaps would engage in supporting Norwegian tech founders, and there could be very strong synergies in that. That proposal has not been accepted. And so for me, it's actually the opposite. The opposite in that we should aspire to have a bit more influence given our financial wealth. And we should aspire to have this financial wealth, also make certain that we have a super competitive, healthy ecosystem of companies in Norway, also in the longer term. So I would turn it around.
When you are thinking about the company and for the investment, for how many years you need to think for investment? 1 year, 5 years, or 10 years when you are thinking about making a startup?
When you invest in a startup, you should prepare for a very long time horizon.
Very long time.
Very long time horizon. So there are relatively few cases where you get liquidity, where you get your money back before 10 years. I think the average today in the world from being the first investor to liquidity might actually be more like 12 to 14 years. And you also see that with the venture capital funds that they're extending the timeline. So that's one of the things to consider. In early stage, it takes a long time to get to liquidity. That means that you should not invest unless you have your own capital. To do this with the loans is very dangerous. So it's very much equity based. And you should only invest a small part of the money you have available.
Like 10% or something.
It takes a long time to get there, and there's a high risk connected to it. When that is said, we all know that there are some phenomenal stories where you get liquidity much quicker and the return is phenomenal. Like we had with Spacemaker, this architect tool to help development of apartment buildings, where we were the first investor, and after only 3.5 years, the company was sold to Autodesk, the biggest software player in the construction engineering industry. And we got 84 times the money back. So $1 invested gave $84 back in 3.5 years. And of course, these stories are some of the reasons why people would like to engage in early stage to try to find the next winners that can deliver that type of return and help to develop strong companies out of Norway. So, but be aware of the fact that the timeline is very long in most cases.
In one of your interviews, you explained that you support tech startups because we cannot rely on large companies to deliver the necessary radical innovations and green transition. Which areas of such radical innovations in Norway particularly inspire you, and how do you determine what constitutes you a truly radical solution in the field of sustainability?
Yeah, I think you do find that the established large companies are struggling to really embrace disruptive technology and solutions. And that is a big problem in Norway because we rely so much on the big state-owned companies. So, for example, for a while, people in Norway thought that Equinor would be a lead player in the green transition. They were hoping for it. It turns out that every time Equinor are presenting their plans, they are reducing their plans for the green economy. And you see all oil and gas companies doing the same. And the capital markets are penalizing any oil and gas company that are trying to do anything green. So that means that if you want to do the green energy transition, it typically have to happen outside of the old fossil companies. And you see it very clearly. And like in Norway, that means that, to drive the basically solar transition, we needed a company that standalone only did that. And that's like Scatec, very successful on the stock exchange, Norwegian, innovative company, very good example. And I think you're going to see so many of these type of innovations when it comes to the way you help consumers optimize their use of electricity in the current environment with electric vehicle chargers and so forth. Again, we have huge utilities in Norway. They're very wealthy, but none of them came up with a solution like Tibber did. And Tibber started out with one guy, and became much more innovative. So I can tell you 100 stories like this, that the real new disruptive innovation hardly ever comes out of the big incumbents in, for example, the green economy. And we have seen the same in digitalization, where again, Norwegian politicians had hoped that the state-owned Telenor, the telco, should be the driver of digitalization. And of course they're not. It's not a digital company. And all the innovation has happened outside of Telenor. And I see it time after time. And in Norway, we do want to believe that these old state-owned companies can be the spearhead. It's a big trap because it's not the case.
And what to do for the new companies and for the startups? Is it better to start a business in other countries then?
No.
For example, to start a business in Baltics and then operate it in Norway?
Yeah, well, I think that it's important for the politicians to understand that when you build a tech company, you actually can establish the company anywhere. And it's different from historical industrial buildup in Norway, because historical buildup has been built on a resource base. So we had the oil and the gas in the North Sea. We had the
Fish, yeah,
we had the
exactly.
fish in the fjords. We had the rivers giving the electricity. We had electricity giving an opportunity for cheap power to drive aluminum production and so forth. So the politicians here have been brought up in a mindset that it's all about harvesting our resources. And if you're going to do that, you need to be here because the resource is here. However, however, the future is not value creation based on the resource base. It's insight, capability, data, analytics, software, AI, perhaps on top of it. But you don't need to build that from Norway. So you're right. We have much more competition in terms of where to put your company. And the Baltics very attractive. Estonia particularly very attractive. I think Estonia has more unicorns than Norway, which is interesting. And we see that there is a trend at the moment that some of the best founders find it more attractive to build outside of Norway. We have many who are doing it in the US, either Trosdal with Chris, Bjørn Lyseggen with Meltwater, and so forth. We have founders of great tech companies that have gone to Switzerland. We have people in Portugal, Erik Langaker and many others. We have people in London. We have people in Singapore, like the Antler team, all Norwegian, that started in Singapore. So I have 100 cases like this.
All the bright minds are going away from Norway.
It's a big challenge.
And how the politicians, or how we can make this environment, how we make a Singapore here in Norway? Is it possible to make another Dubai here?
Well, of course, it is possible. And I think there are things we can do, and I hope it will be done. But to become a Singapore or a Dubai or a Switzerland, that would, in my view, entail so fundamental changes to kind of the contract in Norway between the government and the labor unions, established companies, which is a very strong triangle. And I don't think there is a real felt burning need for change. So if you ask me my guess, will we be a Dubai or a Singapore in 5 to 10 years? No. But I think we have a lot to offer in Norway. It's a very attractive country to live in. It's a very attractive country to have a family in. It's incredibly secure. It's a very fair society in terms of opportunities. There is social mobility. very good education system. We're very international, very global in mindset, and we're a rich country with huge resources. So I think there are only small changes required to make certain that we don't get the best people to move out. And people will stay here, we can attract talent, and so I'm quite optimistic it's possible to make it happen. And we don't need to do so fundamental changes to try to be a Singapore or Dubai. It's not required.
By the way, you saw that visit to Stoltenberg to the United States, and the Trump said, Norway is a good country. You're good.
Norway has a very strong international brand, seen as a very well-run country, non-corrupt, transparent, inviting, and a very good ally. So I agree with you. I think we have a lot going for us. And also partly, the way we have managed the oil fund, trying to be as invisible as absolutely possible, I think has been in many ways smart. And you can see that in our position internationally. So, and by the way, it wasn't really Stoltenberg, it was Støre.
Sorry, yeah.
But everyone is focusing on Stoltenberg, which is interesting.
Backing up to the electric vehicles, Norway is a global leader in electric vehicle adoption and renewable energy, with innovations like hydropower and carbon capture. How do you think Norway's advancement in green tech position it as a pace setter for the world's sustainability agenda? And does this give Norwegian investors like yourself a unique edge in global markets?
I think it does. So, you know that when I started investing, I looked for a few areas where Norway was credible in leading the world. And in my view, clearly within kind of energy more broadly, but electrification specifically. And electrification is a super big driver of the green shift, and Norway is leading. And there are many reasons for that. One, of course, is that we have been operating a renewable grid pretty much forever. Secondly, we liberated the Norwegian electricity market back in 1990-91, before the rest of Europe did it. So we have developed basically a lot of skills in analytics, data, in trading. That is very valuable. And we see a lot of good companies coming out also of that. We have very strong capability clusters, like the cluster in Halden around e-smart systems and so forth, developing absolutely leading digital solutions to help optimize the grid and help optimize basically consumption at home and in large companies. And perhaps thirdly, again, the oil and gas industry, some of the benefits of that industry is that it's been a very rich industry with very high taxation level, which basically has meant that it has lent itself to significant investments in capability. So there's a reason why Saptek and EC and these companies are from Stavanger, leading Europe in electric vehicle charging. And most of these people come out of the oil and gas industry. And that's a very interesting, use of capability that we also see. A lot of transfer of capability from the oil and gas industry into adjacent areas, like in this case. So, and then you have the Tibber type solution that also came out of Norway, that basically at the moment is seen as very innovative across Europe, more from a consumer consumption point of view. And we are involved in many initiatives in this area. It's so big, it's so important, and we are clearly ahead. So it's a good example on what we can build more of out of on Norway.
During a panel at Arendal Suka, it's who, if there's someone is watching from the outside of Norway, it's a politician a week, once per year. You noted that we now have 5 years, not 25, to secure global positions, and that much more venture capital is needed. Do you believe Norway now feels this urgency? What practical steps do you think startups and investors should take to effectively utilize this shortened time frame?
Yeah. This is very important. That, 10, 20 years ago, you could actually spend 20, 25 years to build a global position in an industry. It could even take longer. And when you had that long time window, you could finance yourself from a positive cash flow. You could loan money in the bank. You could just grow your company in a very traditional way, and you could be listed on the stock exchange. And we have many companies in Norway in tech that has done that. The challenge to that model today is that because there is so much risk venture capital available in the world, particularly in the US and in China, companies today are built much quicker. You don't have to wait for becoming profitable. You don't have to wait to have collateral to use debt. You can actually use venture capital to fuel that growth and perhaps in 5, 6, 7 years take a globally leading position. And the time window closes down much more quickly today. And the competition is more fierce from many more countries. So that's where we need venture capital. And we need venture capital at scale to help this happen. And we have not built that strong venture capital ecosystem in Norway because probably we have had so much else to do in other parts of the Norwegian economy. So this is quite new to us. And when I started this work 10 years ago, we hardly had anything. Now we have like 15 billion NOK, $1.5 billion every year in early stage funding. It's becoming better, but it probably should be at $5 billion to match the set of opportunities we have. At $5 billion, we would have 1% of GDP in venture capital. That would be in line with the US, Israel, some other countries that we probably could learn a lot from in terms of how to build quickly global positions. And I think we have the capital, and we can attract the capital, but we need more people to step up and help and talk more about this and create international relationships. And then, of course, the startups needs to deliver. That when they get capital, they need to create value. It's also up to them to prove that we have the capability to actually take care of this money and create value.
I also heard that in Norway it's much more difficult to get investment. And for example, to get investment for $100,000 in USA, it's not so big money. But in Norway, it's a good investment for one startup company. And most of the startups, they're searching for the investments in the United States because it's much more easy to get the investment from there.
Yeah, early on, as you get started, I think the reality is that the investor market is the market around yourself geographically. So proximity is still dominant. That means that of new companies in Norway, 95% get the first money from Norway. That's just the way it is. As they grow, the international interest becomes bigger, particularly to the best companies. But still, the local base is super important. And that's where we need more people, more capital, wanting to take more risk early on to help this ecosystem in Norway. It's getting better. We still have a way to go. I think a good new company in Norway that have an opportunity to grow internationally are not raising $100,000. I think what's happening currently is that they would be, perhaps at the startup lab. They would get the startup lab to invest 2 million kroners. Then they would get perhaps Antler or one other early stage VC to invest 2 million. Perhaps we invested 500,000, and then so they raise 3, 4, 5 million in their first round, typically, and then they raise 10, 15 million kroners, but not $100,000.
You've mentioned you have invested in nearly 140 startups across Europe, Africa, and beyond. Do you believe Norway's startup ecosystem, with its focus on climate tech and AI, is punching above its weight globally. What role do investors like TRK Group that you own play in Project Norwegian innovation onto the world stage?
So the startup ecosystem in Norway is still in its early stages, like we have talked about, and the potential is much higher to really have significant global impact. And I think you're right that in climate tech, for example, electrification that we have talked about, for example, we have a significant opportunity to create globally leading tech companies. We are currently not fully there, and many of us are working hard to try to make that happen. I think we have the starting point. I think we have the capability. We have the testing ground in Norway in many ways. So that should be possible. But we're not there yet. And I do think that it's also important as an investor to be open for the fact that sometimes there are just phenomenal teams that are being created, and they do things that are totally new and different and might not even be connected to some historical strength in Norway. It's just a phenomenal team. And there are many examples like that, but I think, for example, the Remarkable team is remarkable in that way. That they just did it, you know? It wasn't obvious that the world's leading e-ink note taker would come out of Norway, but it did, and they did it. And of course, they need and should have any type of applause for making that happen. But I think it's a good reminder to many of us as investors that actually sometimes, the innovation comes a little bit out of the blue, and you have to be able to follow the team and understand the opportunity the way they see it. And so we're going to see both. We're going to see great innovation coming out of the strength of Norwegian ecosystem, like in energy and climate, but we're also going to see some of these kind of horizontal innovations that just come out of the blue. And we have quite a few of them too.
In the same Arendal discussion, you mentioned that the best tech founders are living in Norway and need to be brought back, and that made global IT talent should be attracted. What policy or ecosystem change do you believe would help retain or bring back such entrepreneurs and attract foreign specialists? We actually talked a bit about it,
it's
but
super important. So on Thursday last week, I was at a reception at the Oslo City Hall, connected to the Life Sciences Conference with lots of international participation. And there, the Oslo municipality announced that they now are going full steam ahead with the international IT tech visa, which basically entails a very, very high speed approval process for international talent to come to Oslo and join scale ups, significantly shortcutting a cumbersome current process. I think we're going to see more of that. That's super important. Just make it plug and play, automatically accepted, bang, into Norwegian tech companies. That's going to be very helpful. Very important. I think, secondly, the use of innovative compensation models, including options, is very important in tech. And unfortunately, Norway has not fully embraced that. So on a European kind of ranking of attractiveness of options as a way for compensation, we are still not doing that well. I think we should just open up, use it at higher scale, higher amounts, being more basically conducive to taxation, being something you pay as you realize you're holding, as opposed to something you pay earlier on. So lots of stuff that can happen on also making it more attractive to come here in terms of compensation and so forth. I think we all know that the current design around the exit taxation is unnecessarily negative for founders. It has no impact on revenue to the Norwegian government, so it's negligence. the only reason why it's been framed like this is that no one in government really care about startup, and particularly not in the Ministry of Finance. There's a big job for me and other people to highlight that. It's unnecessary. So that needs to be changed. Then we just need to make certain that we invite international investors and talent to Norway to get visibility to everything we have here. So like 2 weeks ago, together with the mesh community, I was part of inviting, close to 100 international investors and unicorn founders to Norway. They came to the Lofoten Peninsula, and we spent 3 days with them. That type of stuff is very important, because then they, promote Norway and our ecosystem to their ecosystem. We're going to do more of that. So we all have to chip in and help out.
That was a nice step, actually, to invite investors to the Lofoten.
Yeah.
I think you was lucky with the nice weather, because
the weather was not that. It was okay.
Because
we also had a hurricane, but I thought it was fun.
Oh yeah, okay. Because the Lofoten is like paradise of Norway, in some way. You mentioned that AI and climate change act as accelerators of change. How do these two factors influence your choice of investment projects? In which areas of AI and green technologies do you see the greatest potential for Norwegian and European startups? And what shifts in industrial policy could accelerate this?
So, as an early stage technology investor, you always have to think about the fact that the company you invest into will need to attract other and more professional investors in later rounds, because they're going to continue to lose money and they need investors. So one of the things connected to climate and AI is that you have to make certain that what you invest into is investable for other people. And it's very clear today that there is a schisma, a change going on, where being AI enabled or having built unique AI into your product, being an AI startup, is becoming very important. It's kind of qualifying you a bit. So you would always look for it. Kind of, how are you leveraging AI, generative AI? Now, what's your strategy for that? How are you becoming distinctive in doing that? So it's clearly there. And then you try to be pretty tough in your assessment that what they're going to build in AI is something more than just a very simple wrapper around an LLM. Because many of the cases we look at are very thin. That basically means that if you prompt the same thing directly into the LLM, you get an equally good answer as if you go through their wrapper. So the wrapper needs more. It needs to be, for example, workflow integration. It needs to be GDPR compliance. A lot of stuff you can build in that creates added value over and beyond just the LLM. But I think a lot of people will look at that so that you're not being fooled. Because their development in the LLMs are also very rapid.
Trump said that United States is going to be the heart of the AI in the world. And
they are the heart.
And
it's
he
the
said
origin.
And actually, because the California, actually, it's number 4 in the world, is not the states, but the revenue of them.
Yeah.
But the question was that Trump or United States invests, I don't know the exact amount what they invest, but he declared they're going to be a lot of money would be invested in the AI. And what about the Norway? Do the Norway plan to invest in AI or open the ecosystem that the companies or startups will be open to open their startups in the AI field?
Yeah, I think we will. We will play a different role, of course, from the US. We will not have probably the whole AI tech stack here. We'll probably not produce the GPU chips in Norway. But I think we can do a lot. Only 4 weeks ago, I met with the Bulk Infrastructure and their international partner, who now basically have announced that they will Corviv, I think, yeah, Corviv, that they will launch a huge AI data center close to Kristiansand, billions of NOK investment. A great example that we, for example, through the access to renewable energy, can attract AI players to Norway. And I think there will be a lot of innovation and development of startups on top of that platform, as an example. And I also think that it's inspiring what happened in Finland with Silo AI, that basically developed European LLMs, European language LLMs, smaller, more focused LLMs that were ported to robots and so forth in assembly lines across Europe. And that company was bought by ADM in September last year, $650 million. On one side, a bit sad that this European company was sold to an American company. On the other side, it's an indication that even in Europe, we can develop very deep capability far down in the LLMs, which hasn't been obvious to everyone. And I think also what you see with Mistral, for example, in Paris, and you see the Paris AI cluster, at least is a strong indication that we can develop deep capability. But it's the case that most of the strong European AI hubs, like in Paris and London, has been created because the big American tech companies have been invited to create AI hubs in Paris and London. And that is why I think we need to open up Norway to invite companies like Bulk's partner in Kristiansand, and what Google is trying to do with their data center here and so forth, to get that kind of capability to Norway and find ways for collaboration, because that's required.
Backing up to Terca Group in Africa, with Terca Group focus on African growth markets, how do you see Norway contribution to the global tech narrative in emerging economies? Could Norwegian investment models emphasizing both profit and societal value set a new standard for how wealthy nations engage with the global south?
Yeah, I think some of the things that I'm involved in are very good examples of that. So if we take Opera Software, which basically is headquartered in Oslo, has more than 100 million users on their compression browser, consumer internet solution in Africa. Very large in Nigeria, Kenya, across the continent. And we just launched in Ethiopia, my home country, on top of Safaricom. And then we basically provide free internet data access to new users in Ethiopia. I think that probably going to be 20-30 million people who will get internet connection for the first time because of Opera Software.
Oh.
And I'm very proud of the impact that this has on society. And it opens up the opportunity to provide then new services on top of that, including healthcare services and so forth. So don't forget that Opera, a Norwegian company, is very active in Africa with this model. Also, I'm working with and I'm on the board of Lærdal Medical. Lærdal Medical is running some of the largest healthcare operations in Africa on life-saving. We have a very large program in Tanzania on safer birth for maternal and child health and survival. Also running a big program in Ethiopia and about to start a program in Nigeria. So it's another good example.
You're very deep in Africa.
Very deep in Africa. We started paper recycling in Ethiopia to provide both basically a better climate solution, but also to create affordability and jobs for 4,000 people. So I find it's possible to combine both focus on business value creation, but also with the huge impact on society. And interestingly, the authorities in different African countries are clearly now more happy with us coming in and creating profitable businesses, as opposed to just relying on grants And what has happened recently with US aid and so forth have further, I think, reinforced that it's much more sustainable and resilient to actually create an ongoing business as opposed to grants. So this is in line with, I think, the work we're doing.
Norway's small population contrasts with its massive global economic footprint. How do you think Norway's ability to attract and nurture global talent, as you have advocated, enhances its influence in tech and innovation? Could this talent strategy to be key to Norway's outsized role on the world stage?
So, as I've said before, we really don't want the world to believe that we have any outsized impact. We would like to be not that visible, which is why these $2 trillion in the oil fund are spread out on thousands of companies, and we don't want to have an influencing position. And I think there is a big question mark, kind of what is Norway's strategy for having positive impact on the world? It's a good question. And we haven't fully grown up to it, I think. If you indicate that that could entail developing companies that help solve big global challenges with the help of technology, I'll be very happy. And I think, as I mentioned, Opera Software is an example. Lærdal Medical is an example. Then both of them I'm close to. I think there are others that we should be proud of. But there we could do more. We could have a higher ambition. And it's up to us to do that. And I would be happy to engage in that going forward. See whether we can create the next set of locomotives out of Norway that help solve big global challenges. So that's a good challenge to us.
In an interview with the Dagen Næringsliv, it's a business newspaper, you said that investors need to have empathy for founders facing difficulties during a crisis. What does having empathy mean to you as an investor? Can you provide an example where supporting founders with understanding helped them or influenced your investment decision?
Yeah, all the time. I think it's important when you invest in a company in the early days, in the early stage, that you engage in a 10 to 12, 14-year partnership. Because, it's going to take a long time. And you're going to be close. So you're in a way, you're in the canoe together. It doesn't help to elevate yourself and just kind of shout down to the startup. Has no positive impact. You need to be in the canoe together, and you need to problem solve together, own the problem and the challenge together. I think that's the only way to survive, to be helpful, and to make this work. And from there comes the empathy, because we are in it together. What you expect then, of course, is full transparency from the founder. You would like everything to be on the table so that you can help to sort things out, prioritize, and help to take action. So it's a two-way street. I'm offering my help and involvement. I'm not basically forcing myself on the founder, but I think every founder knows that I'm more than happy to jump into the canoe, and but they also need to open up and be partner-like. And then I think magic can happen, and it's never easy. So it's also a bit, for me, it's a bit of a message to people who move into early stage investing, that this is different from buying a share on the stock exchange. Very different. This is about engagement, putting yourself into it, and it's time consuming, but it can be very rewarding. So that's my lesson learned.
To be transparent and to be engaged, if you are an investor, to be engaged in the startup that you invested.
Yeah.
You warned about the valley of death for startups and anticipated a 25-30% drop in tech company valuations. What lessons and strategies do you recommend for startups and investors in such a downturn? What specific indicators do you now pay close attention to when selecting companies for investment to avoid future losses?
Mm. So this valley of death, I think, has been, broadly communicated, and it basically is the challenge you have when you have raised some money. You started, you got a few customers, a little bit of revenue perhaps, but you lose money, and you're gonna continue to lose money for quite a few years. And ideally, you are, despite that, able to attract new investors to come into the company at higher valuations than you have previously had. And that is the dream. That's what I would like to see, that we are able to raise the valuation in every round. You get full recognition for the value created with the money you spent, and so forth and so forth. And in those cases, everyone is happy. Unfortunately, very often that's not the case. For different reasons, other investors, new investors, are not fully happy with where you are. You might have wasted some money. You might have tried something that didn't work out. You might have hired two people that didn't work out. You might, there are lots of stuff that can happen. And the world is pretty tough in those situations. It might mean that to attract capital, you need to reduce valuation, the price per share. You need to take it down. And then you're, facing this value of death in many ways. And it creates a lot of issues. And for us, we actually often are helping out in those situations. Both because us participating can be important to attract investors, but also because from a value creation point of view, sometimes the valuation is taken so low that we'd be stupid not to participate. But I would just say that this is not the ideal solution. The best solution is to be able to deliver and attract new investors at higher valuations in every single round. That is kind of the ABC of venture capital. But it's not always happening.
The idea of Norway controlling the world might evoke its historical Viking reach of modern economic power. From your perspective as a global investor, what unique strengths does Norway bring to the table today that amplify its influence in technology and sustainability, and how sustainable is this influence?
As I said, I don't think we control the world, and we don't want to control the world. But let's say that we could create some really strong companies that have big positive impact on the climate shift. And that would typically come out of the capability bases we have in Norway. So, as I've indicated earlier, I think that electrification is a particularly ripe area, because electrifying the world is part of the green shift and the green solution. And there we are leading in terms of capability on the renewable grid, on the trading, data analytics connected to optimizing the grid and optimizing consumption at home. So electrification is a good example. Then I think everything that happens offshore, particularly perhaps when it comes to offshore wind, I think we have the capability to participate. I'm not certain we have the geographic configuration in the North Sea to make that a really attractive area for offshore wind in itself. But I know we have the services industry and the capability in the whole supply chain to play a significant role in offshore wind as it happens outside of Norway. And we can already see that, for example, in the UK and in Denmark, in the Netherlands, and so forth. We are a very important player in the whole supply chain, in technology. So that's another example. Capability coming out of our strength in oil and gas and in shipping. And we're going to have a number of these areas, I think, where we can be quite leading. And hydrogen is another area where, again, we are very strong. It's not fully resolved how that will play out, but everyone believes it will be a very, very important part of the solution. Again, we have some companies that are absolutely cutting edge, like NEL, but many others too. Also in the fuel cell area for shipping, propulsion, for example, we are very strong. So you're going to find many areas like that. I always say basically that we in Norway, we have too many opportunities and we're too few people. Perhaps we should just have higher ambition, bring more people to Norway, build bigger companies, have more impact. We have the capital. We have so much to build on. So I'm actually quite optimistic.
Thank you very much, Trond, for open us a bit eyes into that question, and that was very interesting to talk to you. You are very knowledgeable about the global economy, about the startups and investment, and hopefully gonna see you in a couple of years, or
Absolutely.
maybe
Thank you so much for inviting
when
me.
the Norway gonna be another when the Norway gonna be one of the, not in 5 years maybe, then when the Norway gonna be in new Singapore or Switzerland or Dubai.
Yeah. Thank you for inviting me. It was a fascinating discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, done.
Super.
Yes, managed.
Yeah.